To move on to color, and not just basic solid color, but gradient color. Let's go ahead and open up Illustrator as always. Do File, New. Let's just open up a standard flyer document. So we're going to click OK. Okay, so gradients. Let's first start out with the Shape tool. Let's do a solid black box. Actually, let's do a box. It's going to hold down Shift, make a perfect square. And so right now it's set on a solid color. So how do I make this more than just a solid color? What are my options? We have a gradient panel right here, and if for some reason you don't have this tab, just simply go to Window and you should be able to set that as visible. So go to the Gradient tab, and so right here is kind of your default gradient. So I went ahead and clicked on this, and default is always white to black. And you can change this by clicking over here to the gradient tool on this toolbox, and it's going to have a direction. So what you're going to do is you're going to be able to, at any point, click and drag a line and anywhere in the box, and you can change the direction and the width of the blending. So if I want to have a really tight blending, I'm going to click and just go like a little tiny fraction, and it's going to have a very sharp blending. But if I want to have a nice smooth transition, I'm going to click somewhere way out here, make a long line, and make it blend much more smoother. So you can see how that creates kind of a really nice gradient, much more modern than that harsh, dated 80s gradient that we had going on. So how do we change these colors? So we have, if we go down here to a gradient panel, we'll go ahead and double click this color right here. Of course, right now it's just set on your standard black. We're going to need to go up to this options panel and make sure it's set on, let's see, we're in CYMK mode. Let's go ahead and press on that, whatever mode you're in. If you're doing a print, it's probably CMYK. If you're doing digital, it's RGB. Let's do CYMK, so it'll give you some options. You can go down here and play with some different, let's do light blue. And let's say I want this to be really close to this blue. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on this blue, and let me kind of zoom in here a little bit so you can see. I'm going to click on this blue, and I'm going to click right next to it, and it's going to create another point on the gradient scale for me. And I'm going to be able to slide this over, and a way to delete this old black color is just drag it down, and it's going to disappear and let go. So now I have two of the same color. Well, that's a regular solid fill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this one or this one, it doesn't really matter. Click on this, and I'm going to make this a darker version of that color. And so let's go ahead and go here and draw our gradient. Select the box, click the gradient tool, and there we are. Let's make that more of a blue. There we go, that's really good looking. So we have kind of a light blue to a dark blue transition. And so this is a linear. This means the blending mode is always going to be kind of in a line, just like that. Let's do a circular, it's called a radial. Just go ahead and click on this option that's in the gradient panel and click on radial. I'm just going to change it so it's more of a spherical blending transition. So you're going to have this circle that you can change the size of the blend. So I really like that. I really like how that transitions a lot better than the linear. I do radial a lot. So a lot of times when I do a gradient, I go right to this and go ahead and switch to radial. There are times when the linear is used, but this has a much nicer blend to it. It's not just straight line blending. It's got a really nice look to it. So this is a great way to create backgrounds that are a little bit more dimensional. They're not just flat. It kind of adds lighting to the overall ad. So I went ahead and this is just a standard shape that has a gradient on it. Now that I've extended it to the final size I like, I'm going to see what looks the best. Let's see, I kind of want it brighter on the top and a little bit darker on the bottom because my text of the ad is going to be right here. Text goes here. Go ahead and make this larger, make that white. Let's make that railway. Then let's make it black. So that looks really nice. You can also do this with grays to create a nice gray background that you can put product photos on and add shadows. So there's a lot of options here with gradients. Let's create another gradient just to kind of keep practicing. Let's zoom in. Let's do a star this time. Let's go to whole shift. I'm going to make a star. Right now it's just a white fill, so you can't see it. So let's change that to just a pink fill so you can see it. And let's go over to gradient. Let's click on that gradient box, and it's going to create our gradient. So let's do this. I'm going to add 3 different points of color. You can add as many of these things as you want, but I usually like to keep it simple. So let's do 3. So we have a nice transition there. Let's do radial. Let's have it blend really subtle. So let's do a nice big. This is just experimenting right here. So it almost looks like there's light coming from the top. You create almost lighting effects. That's pretty cool. So I can create a gradient for my fill instead of a solid color. But what about stroke? Yes, you could put a gradient on a stroke. That hasn't always been the case, but that's in the newer versions of Illustrator. You can now do gradients on your strokes. So let's add a solid fill stroke just as an example. We'll do pink. Let's increase the stroke. There's stroke. We can have it see our gradient really good. So now that it's on the solid, I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and it's going to create a gradient. So now you kind of have that. Let's make that skinnier. Go to stroke. Go back to gradient. And I can also change the direction and the lighting on this as well. So let's shift it. So you can shift these colors around, make it transition a little different. You can kind of create some metallic effects if you do this correctly. Just like that, it almost looks like a metallic reflection. So that's kind of cool. There's also, so if you go to swatches, you might have some gradients that are already in your swatch palette. If not, a great way to add some default gradients so you don't have to sit there and create gradients from scratch is there's this little swatch libraries where this is in your swatch panels. You're going to go to swatch libraries, click on that, and there it goes. It hovers right over gradient, and you have all these different kind of preset gradients. So let's do, is there metals? Let's do metals. This is a pretty cool effect. So now I can make this look like copper. I can do the inside, make it look gold, or make it more dramatic. Do the outside, any old color you like. And those are kind of how you get some default gradients. This is kind of a basic introductory to gradients. And once again, I'll create something more detailed where we can really go into some neat stuff with gradients.